we don't know what to change if we don't hear it, right? And I think the biggest thing is adherence. And so if we slam a client up that much, we put them up that much, and they're not going to follow it, or they're going to be too full. It's even the same argument we have with like reverse dieting versus just throwing someone up to maintenance. Like, yes, there's no point physiologically with keeping a reverse diet, but psychologically, women are like not wanting to add on 450 calories right out the gate because of fullness, bloating, water retention, digestive issues. So we go a little slower, and that's fine as long as you get there.
All right. Hey guys, thanks for tuning in. We got an exciting guest here, Dr. Ashley, joining us today. So excited to have you on. The wide range of background between your pharmacology, PhD, and a bunch of different certifications I'm sure we'll get into, as well as you're competing as a MPC athlete. So I think it's definitely a nice mixture. So I think the audience out there is going to be in for a lot of really good factoids and conversations, as long as I don't mess it up, right? So
no, it's impossible to mess it up. I am excited to be here. Thank you for having me on.
Well, good stuff. Yeah, I thought we would kind of just jump in a little bit to just a little more, about your journey. There's obviously some information online, or online, excuse me. But for the audience out there that may not know a lot about you, what got you into all this fun, crazy stuff as far as functional health and health coaching and all that good stuff?
Oh man. I had my own slew of issues with health issues where like Western medicine did not go well. It kind of failed me. And as a Western medicine practitioner, like I was a pharmacist. And so I only knew allopathic and Western medicine. And so it was really interesting just going through the motions of all of that and just trying to get answers, and then realizing the functional approach that I ended up finding later was really just about diet and lifestyle changes that I needed for myself. And I just like fell in love with the trajectory of that. And then once you're kind of handing out pills over a counter every day that
Sure.
I, for lack of a better word, I kind of term them Band-Aids versus like actual life changes. That kind of got me into like, all right, I can't stay in pharmacy anymore. Like I need to do this. Like, how do I do this with my degree? And so, we made it happen.
Yeah, I think though there's a lot of, combination of coaches, even some medical professionals that don't understand, the pharmaceutical side of things and how things metabolize in the body and the timing release and all those different things. So I think it's a really great advantage for clients that are working with you, because if they're on certain medications, you're going to have a deeper understanding than your average coach. And then, if they're doing some kind of more, advanced treatments or things that maybe are not disease prevention, but they're more optimization things, like maybe some hormone management, or, if they have some kind of other metabolic dysfunction that's being treated, you're going to know how to work that in because you have a deeper understanding of that, which I think is pretty neat. So,
yeah.
And I was curious, kind of when you started to have this aha moment or some of these issues you're working through, was it when you were getting into competing? Is that what triggered some of it? You had like issues from like your protocol, maybe like some, extreme dieting or things like that? Or was it something else that came up that got you interested?
No, it was 100% years of competing and eating the really low diet, lifestyle, training, overtraining. I started competing at 22, and like competing in 2011 is way different than it is now. So like, I don't even want to tell people that I used to compete in bikini because it was such a different scene back then. But I competed at 22 first, loved it, won my first show. And I was like, oh, we're doing more of these. And then, competed again that next summer twice. And I was like, okay, I have to put this on pause until after I graduate pharmacy school. Like there was just no way to take tests with no carbs and no fats, It was just, let's not fail pharmacy school for NPC competitions. So I didn't really go into improvement seasons though. Like I didn't know anything about that back then. My coach didn't do macros. We didn't do kind of like reverse dieting. So I was just trying to continue to eat what I was eating. And then I became a pharmacist. I competed last time at 26, and I still maintain that lifestyle, like very low calorie, overtraining. I developed orthorexia and just kind of being really obsessive about food. and ultimately ended up driving my hormones, thyroid, everything into the gutter. Cortisol was like 25. I think my
Mm,
fasting glucose was in the 50s. So I was like narcoleptic. Like it was not a good time to be alive. And so, all I really needed to do was increase food, step back on training, like let my body recalibrate. And instead, I got slammed on like a bunch of medications that I still take a thyroid medicine to this day. But I had no idea. I was like, oh, thyroid labs are off. That means I need to take thyroid medicine.
right.
Progesterone's off. That means I need to take progesterone. Like it wasn't nobody, I didn't know how to change that with my lifestyle. And so I'm
Sure.
more the naturopath or like the homeopath anyway. So I'd rather people know how to do this.
Yeah. And what was the first steps in that process? Like, when you were kind of coming out of that, as far as the first kind of step to address some of it from a more functional standpoint outside of the, you know, bodybuilding or physique type approach?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I had to do was first of all like get labs, right? Like we needed a
Right.
baseline of what was going on, and the functional provider would test way more labs than just say the regular PCP was testing.
Sure.
So the first approach, functional medicine places do tend to throw you on a lot of supplements right away, also instead of diet and lifestyle. So I will say I did do a heavy amount of supplements for a while, but it was also about getting the right types of foods in, eating more carbs. Like I was one of those women who were like avoiding carbs only after and before a workout. And it was, rice cakes. Other than that, there was no fruit allowed or like too much
Right.
sugar. Yeah, it was not great. So eating more carbs, getting my calories up, it was just not sustainable at 1400 calories. Like I couldn't sustain that all the time. So getting that up by reverse dieting, finally finding macros and like allowing myself to have more of a food freedom approach. And then backing off training. There was a period of time where I had to take my training to like 2 days a week and 30 minutes max instead of 6. And all the cardio I was doing, it was such a mental mind block to go through that. But those were the approaches I really needed to do, like support gut health, support my adrenals, back off of
Right.
stressors, recalibrate.
Yeah, I think that's another just good nugget, right? To like working with someone who has real life experience, not only competing at a high level, well-versed formal education, but then also like going through your own struggles, because what a lot of people don't realize, they think the coach or the person in the picture has it all figured out. And it's like, no, there's a journey, there's a process. And I think it's great that the more people in the industry are sharing that journey, because then people can kind of resonate with it. Cause I'm sure there's women listening to this that are going to say like, oh my gosh, that's me. Like I'm training 6 days a week. I'm a cardio queen and I don't eat carbs. And like, I've been stuck for 3 years. And, um, and I also think for those maybe out there that have competed or are competing, I don't want to name too many names or anything like that, but a good friend of mine in the early 2000s, he's still a pretty well-known bodybuilding coach. And so he knew a lot of other coaches, and he does some women.
Mhm.
But one of the things we would both kind of hear a lot about was just how aggressive or um, unhealthy, if I will. And bodybuilding is not healthy. Let's call it what it is, like getting that extreme low body fat. But it was just like a little, like way over the top. And I think, I don't know if that's gotten better, but like I still see people, like even in the work we do, we still see young, very healthy on the outside looking women coming in that are just trashed on the inside. And so is that something you see on the competitive landscape, or is more of your clientele kind of general health right now?
Our clientele is Gen Pop. We don't really do, I mean, we've had competitors in the past who we've worked with, or like post show, they don't compete anymore to
Yeah.
kind of help their hormones, right? Get them pregnant, get fertility back on. But we generally work with Gen Pop right now.
Got it. Got it. Okay. Yeah. And just so the journey you kind of started, you mentioned a couple things there when you're working through. I'm curious if you can kind of unpack a little bit of some of the like gut health approaches. Like that's a really big piece, I think, that's not well understood, or not as maybe uh, attractive to market for people, like talking about stool and gut health and metabolites and all this stuff, but and microbiome. But like, what was that journey like with you? And then, I know we'll get into it a little bit more later, but I know it's something you're pretty very well versed in. But how was that for you?
Yeah, listen, we ask our clients every single week how your bowel movements are. We give them the Bristol stool chart. Like, I want to know.
Yep.
So none of this is like TMI or too much for me. Like, we got to get comfortable talking about this stuff. I need to know if you're pooping, right? So for me back then, I had like the umbrella term of IBS. So it's not even like a functional diagnosis. But what it ended up being after some tests was like very low stomach acid, which is brought on by hypothyroidism, which I have, and also like so much stress that I was putting my body through. In like increased intestinal permeability, which listeners might know as like leaky gut. So we had a lot of gut dysfunction, inflammation. I had non-ulcerative gastritis at one point that I healed naturally because the doctors are like, take 2 weeks of omeprazole and you should be good. Absolutely not. So that was a protocol more of like glutamine, collagen, bone broth, cutting out coffee, alcohol, like, acidic things for a while. So the gut health was really important because even if you're eating food, if you're not breaking it down properly, there were so many probiotics, so many digestive enzymes, there was just a lot going on in that protocol. And that is one area where I'm okay with clients taking a lot of supplements because we need it at that point. Like, I need you to take enzymes. I need you to get stomach acid up. Maybe we could do apple cider vinegar, but the betaine with HCl works wonders if we really need it. So just a lot of dysbiosis. And so getting that back on track so that I wasn't having like a bowel where if I ate something, I immediately had to run to the bathroom, or stomach cramps, or, bloating and gas.
Sure.
The fun side.
Yeah.
Yeah. And just being on such a strict diet. I mean, Joe, I'm sure like bodybuilding diets are like egg whites and steamed fish and chicken and like 12 almonds. Like, there's not a lot of diversity going on.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It just crushes it, right? And then you have like quote unquote normal food, even though it's like healthy, but then you're just trashed after that meal because your gut's like, what did you put in me? You've been doing this for 2-3 years, whatever. Just the basics. But and just, I know there's a lot of nuance and everyone's different, right? But just generally for those out there, like, how long on average would a protocol like that take on, just again, on average, or maybe even if how long it took you in that instance?
My gut protocols took me about 12 weeks.
Okay. So yeah,
a good amount of time.
And just out of curiosity, do you do any work with like mold detoxification protocols or anything like that? Or
we don't at this moment. No, we haven't stepped into that sector yet. But
sure, yeah, I was just curious because I had a family member, and we've had clients of ours, and with what we do, and they were some prior to meeting, so I don't know the validity of the protocol, but it was like almost a year. And they were pretty bad. They were in rough shape, and everything as far as how they would metabolize medications, to massive swings in emotions and depression and energy and all this stuff was just like, I know it sounds dumb, but like, I can't even get up and like walk. I just don't want to do it. It's like, no, it doesn't. Like, we have your blood work, we have this, we have that. Like, you don't have the raw materials to do something. So stop beating yourself up. Like, you're going to be okay. Like, it's tough, and this individual actually was where they worked, they were exposed to, I forget the actual specific type, but it was a pretty nasty one. So I was just kind of curious a little bit about that.
Mold is a beast. And unless I can do it properly and have the time to research it, like, I'm not going to touch a client and mess them up further. Like, no way.
Well, and that's a good stance on it, because I'm sure they have the best of intentions, but there's a lot of like coaches or stuff I see online, and I don't want to rush to judgment, but it makes me pause, because I'm like, okay, so if you give them your probiotic, but that bacteria is already high in their gut, what are we doing here? You're just creating more of a divide. So it's just really, I think, the importance of pausing, going through the proper testing to really identify like what specifically does that protocol look like. And it sounds a lot like that's what you do. And I'm just curious, like, what type of testing do you like to use, or assessing do you like to use before starting a protocol?
Yeah. So we work with a lot of women who have hormonal issues like hypothyroidism, PCOS, metabolic syndrome, insulin resistance, things like that. So We just do like general lab panels will suffice for that,
Mhm.
cholesterol, thyroid, and more than just like the doctor will order like a full
Sure.
thyroid panel, not just TSH. If we need to get into the nitty gritty, we will do Dutch tests, and we can also
Mhm.
order GI maps with our clients, like speaking
Okay.
of. So we get into that realm most of the time. Anything else that's a little more specialized, I'll refer out, or because I also don't, this is like kind of weird, but I don't really take on one-on-one clients anymore. I have coaches under me. So if my
Sure.
coaches are not also comfortable with that material yet, I don't want to bring someone on and, be the guinea pig. So
Yeah, I know we only have so much time, but I could totally nerd out on GI maps and Dutch test. It's funny because there's like, who's this big, scary looking dude that's talking about women's health? But I had like three family members, women that were working with that when I first got into, more of, it was a little more like of an HRT replacement type place, less functional medicine is the way I would define it. But
mhm.
nonetheless, brilliant doctor was working with a family member of mine, and they had low estrogen in their blood work, but estrogen dominant symptoms. And I was like, this doesn't make any sense. And so short of the long, that's kind of, I don't know if it was about 6 years ago, but I was at a conference, and that's when I was first introduced to Dutch, because basically their methylation process was backed up to where that's where they were having those estrogen dominant symptoms. In a way, the best way I could describe it to people, and this, but is, imagine your faucet's running very, very low and just barely dripping, but it's clogged. Eventually, it's still going to overflow. It's just going to maybe take a little longer. And then once that cleared, it was just like, oh, like parting of the sea. Like it was like, oh my gosh, like I can do the treatment that I needed to do, and it doesn't completely throw me into overdrive or whatever. So I
Yeah.
think it's awesome that you do that, because there's not a lot of coaches, there's not a lot of doctors, and I'm not knocking doctors. It's just, it's tough to know. You got to put a lot of time in and have the discipline to read through that stuff and really understand it, and which is great that you guys are doing it. That's awesome.
I think it takes the special, like, because anyone can just say that they're certified in something and then offer it, right? But I think
Yeah.
for myself, like, I really enjoy the puzzles, like the difficult
Yeah.
clients. I enjoy nerding out on this kind of stuff. So to me, it's like, ooh, fun. I get to break into this like really messed up test and like monitor the client's biofeedback and like watch them get way better. It's awesome to me. Like,
It's kind of like the good news, bad news. Like, good news, you're a mess. Bad news, you're a mess. Like, because some of these tests can be a little bit more expensive, or for some, they're not expecting that because they're used to, well, I just go to my doctor. And it's like, yeah, your doctor does like 15% of what we're about to test here, or someone like yourself would test. And, and then when you get it, you're like, well, you didn't waste your money. That's kind of good. But the bad news is we got some issues.
yeah, I mean, I have a client just like that. Like, even if you're a basic fat loss and diet coach, right? You realize like after 12, 16 weeks, your client's not seeing results, even though they should be in a calorie deficit, they're tracking well. So maybe you send them for labs, right? Like at this point, we're already doing labs. I see what the client's lab work looks like. And I'm like, your acne is still so bad. Like I have a client who's really suffering with acne, sometimes hormonal, like her hormones are fine. And like everything is kind of checking out fine. But then I was like, I need you to do a stool test. And we just got the GI map back and it is not fine. So I'm kind of
Oh,
excited for her. Like, good news, we found your issue. And now she can stop like stressing, right? Like we have an answer. But a doctor, there's controversy with GI maps too. Like it's not the whole picture. I don't know, but it's better than nothing. And I think we get a
right.
lot of results from doing these.
Well, a couple of follow-up questions and I'm just curious your take on, like, you mentioned gut permeability. Do you use the Zonulin testing with the GI map? And what are your, just for those who might not know what that is or what that means, could you kind of explain briefly, just overview, like why is that important to have, and how do you use it in your practice?
Yeah. So our, like how it works in the gut, like what all that is kind of thing. Our guts are like what the mucosal layer is like one cell thick, a couple cells thick of what we really need to protect, which keeps all the stuff in the stomach out of the bloodstream, which is really important. So our intestines have these things called tight junctions, and obviously with stress and alcohol and antibiotics and junk food and all the things that we pound on our body all day, these tight junctions get not so tight. And so particles in our food start to slip through them and then they go out into the bloodstream. And this is where we see a lot of food sensitivities. Like you don't really have a food sensitivity, you have a leaky gut. We see a lot of autoimmune issues. We see a lot of, like, this is in women with Hashimoto's a lot of the time, or any other type of autoimmune. So what we need to do is seal those tight junctions back up and increase the durability of the mucosal layer again and feed that good bacteria to kind of get everything working properly. And so once we can do that, it takes a lot of removal, like removing of the things that are making it so bad, repairing, reinoculating, what the 5 R's, I can't even remember what they all are right now, but so leaky gut is really, really common, especially with the lifestyle that Americans are, partaking in on a normal day. Even us, like even myself, I just got my GI map back, and my Zonulin's actually really pretty decent, but I do have a little bit, and I'm like, okay, we'll just seal that off a little bit. Because the stress load of an entrepreneur is so minimal, So
It's just walk in the park. You made it. You have it made, right? Like you're so lucky. Yeah. Everything comes easy to you, right?
You
You didn't have to work for your competition, your degree, your business. It all just fell in your lap. No, that I appreciate you kind of unpacking that out there, because there's a lot of, and I get it. There's a lot of nuance to some of these questions. So just for the viewer out there, still work with a professional that knows what they're doing. That's why we invited Dr. Ashley on. But one of the things I did want to just unpack a little bit, because you mentioned glutamine and some other protocols. Again, this is not a prescription for people, but just what are some example protocols, and what would that look like? Like some possible protocols that one would use.
Oh man. Yeah. So depending on like what the client has going on, like, are you talking about just gut barrier? Are we talking about?
Yeah, let's say gut barrier. Let's start with that.
Yeah. So gut barrier, I mean, L-glutamine, I love for gut barrier repair. It helps in a bunch of different ways in the stomach, but L-glutamine powder, it's super cheap. It's super easy. It used to be a supplement that we were taking forever for like muscle recovery. And then it was actually proven it doesn't do anything for muscle recovery.
Gotta love that.
I remember taking that in 2011, like 3 times a day. Like it helps with soreness. I'm like, no, it doesn't. But I didn't know that back then. So also potentially doing that, doing some collagen can sometimes help with the gut barrier. Doing like zinc carnosine can repair and protect the gut lining. Sometimes even omega-3s help. We can do, my favorite thing is just to remove the things that are causing the biggest issues in the gut. So like we do have to remove alcohol. We do have to remove, some of those stressors from the body. We do need to have stress management. I also love for gut barrier repair. I think bone broth does really well. Also for inflammation, I think bone broth does great because the collagen in it.
Okay.
That helped seal off mine a while ago, tried and true. So
what does that look like? Like, is it just working it into certain dishes? Is it like a specific, like, I mean, again, I know there's nuance to this, but is it like an amount, like, hey, you have to have it on an empty stomach in the morning, or you have to, like, what does that look like?
Yeah. So personally, my protocol when I was doing this and when I'll have clients do it is they'll wake up in the morning and take like 5 grams of glutamine on an empty stomach with water. And then before breakfast, they'll have 8 ounces of bone broth on an empty stomach. I know, you put it in the microwave. Honestly,
I've done it plenty times.
Yep. Honestly, some of the bone broths now are actually really good, but some of them are also made with like garlic and onion. And if we have someone who's like low FODMAP, I can't give them those. So we got to get the really important ones. But yeah, 8 ounces on an empty stomach, 6 to 8, twice a day. I have them do it in the beginning. I have them do it twice a day. So before bedtime also, we'll probably also do another dose of glutamine in the beginning, or when we're in that like repair stage. So like 10 grams a day. It just depends on how bad the clients it, like what we're coming back with.
Gotcha. And you usually follow up with an additional test 3-4 months later, or does it depend? And if they're just, hey, you're feeling good, so let's just keep rolling. Like what does that look like?
That is my preference. Like I will be doing that to test mine, but not every client can pay for another $500 test, right? So we'll go by symptoms, and if everything seems to be fine, like we stop the protocol and we see how they're doing. But I would love to retest. That's always like
just to kind of checks and balances, right? Make sure things are good to go there. I want to come back to some of the fun science talk, but I do have a curiosity. So one of them was, why BDN, why big day nutrition, excuse me. So where did that come from? That's the
It's
very
so
creative.
funny. I've been thinking of like rebranding again, but we've just been this for so long. So, funny story, when I started my company in 2018, I started it not like I wanted to eventually get to a point of dietetics and functional medicine, but I didn't know that back then. And I was helping, like I was 28,
Mhm.
29, and all of my friends were getting married. I think I had 9 weddings in 1 year. And I was like,
Okay.
yeah, it was crazy. I had the fitness background. So everyone was asking me, how do I lose weight? So I would help them with their weight loss for their wedding. And they're like, you need to do this for a living. And I was like, I have a full ass pharmacy job. Like there's no way. And then I kind of sat on it. And then I came up with like, so BDN stands for the big day nutrition. So like I was helping grooms and brides and like people in weddings. I would go to bridal expos and set up a booth. Like I started as
Nice.
to help brides so they didn't crash diet because I was watching all my friends and I was like, do not crash diet like competitors do. This is how you eat for your goals. And I realized like, no, I just want to help all women. And then it just kept morphing into like what we are now.
That's awesome. I assume there was a story similar to that, but
Yeah.
that definitely, that makes a lot of sense, but I think it's applicable. I think it's applicable for everybody. And I think it's nice too, because years ago when I was a trainer, um, I would always tell people, even if they didn't have a date, like, let's pick one, let's make it like a
Yeah.
special date. Cause I think it just helps, like, as you know, right? Even with school or project at work, whatever, if you don't have a deadline or you don't have some kind of like check in on your progress, it's just, it's always okay to, I'm going to restart Monday. Right. And so it kind of keeps people on and setting that big day. So I like that. That's awesome.
Yeah. And so now we're kind of in where we're at. And it's been 6.5 years since I even started the big day nutrition. And I'm like, do I need to like rebrand to something else? Because I have so many people who ask me, like, what is TeamBDN? I'm like, I know.
Well, but that's
It's your
still marketing, right? It
yeah,
creates a little engagement and like, what is that? Like that's,
yeah.
some of the most successful marketing campaigns are the ones that maybe didn't fully resonate, but it got curiosity going. So I think you're onto something. So
We're keeping it. I've tried to have BDN mean something else and like people would funny things about it. Like, I'm sure we could, if it was BDE, I'm sure you could get the where I'm going with that. But I think we'll keep it for now and I'll keep the curiosity, but
good stuff. Good stuff. Well, one of the things that with your background, I'd really like to unpack a little bit further for the audience out there is related to like common hormone health myths, whether it's, you know, after birth control or PCOS or perimenopause. Like, what are some things out there that maybe, you're active in social media and doing talks and things of that nature. Like, what are some common myths you see, or maybe people that are coming in that have these myths?
man, I think one that stands out immediately is like the notion that you can balance your hormones. Like that's not a thing. I think it started probably as marketing language, but now you have all these like hormone balancing supplements, and I'm like, what are you balancing? Like where's the scale in the body? So there's no hormone balancing. I would say other
Mm.
myths are that like sugar and carbs cause like diabetes and insulin resistance, or you need to give up all of those to heal that. Oh my gosh, high cortisol. If I see another like happy juice, high cortisol, puffy face thing, I will lose it. Like cortisol does not need to be demonized. It's just it kind of gets to a point where like you see all of these myths and you see all these things and you're like, I so empathize with the general public because there's
Yep.
so much online that you don't even know what to believe. Like one creator is no, you don't need to sync your cycles, and the
Yep.
other like you need to sync your cycles. I'm in the no syncing cycles camp, so it's just like it becomes really confusing and people don't know who to trust. So
It,
uh,
no, it's funny you mention that because literally I don't think it goes live for a couple of weeks, but we just did an episode where two of my friends that are researchers, where we basically, and it might be a little dry for some, but we're hoping to get some good clips out of it because it's nerdy. But we went through research, like how to read research. Like, okay,
okay,
here's influencer A. Like if they say study says this and it's a headline and there's no citation, right away red flag. I'm like, no. If they also say big headline and you're like, no one won like a Nobel Prize for some amazing breakthrough, this headline seems like it would justify being in like mass news, another red flag. But also, here's how you read the citation, or here's how you look at, the research methods, the conclusions, the whatever, like just trying to, unpack that a little bit, because I totally get it. Like, it was like, you should be drinking raw milk and eating grass and doing cartwheels in the morning in the sun, or whatever, right? Like, the sun's great, don't get me wrong, but
Insane.
I'm being a little exaggeratory here, but I think that you hit a spot on the way you said it. Is just, it's nice that there are people out there that have credentials in sound science, and you maybe it takes longer to grow your followers, but at least the people that are getting the information from you, because it's not, clickbait and whatever, but at least they're getting stuff that is more, there's a little bit of clickbait, well, there's always got to be, but at least they're getting some sound information there.
Yeah, I think the boring basic stuff is not sexy, so it doesn't like buy in the followers like others, right? And even today, my validation posts, like you've probably seen this, there's a lot of accounts, even doctors, like even people with credentials, which is why I don't know, for me personally, like ever since 2020, and I get it, like doctors have lost a lot of credibility on the internet. And even being pharmacists, right? The prefix does worse things for me sometimes than better. And whereas I'm seeing a lot of creators online who are, in the perimenopause and menopause space, like really trying to make women feel seen and heard, but then they're not offering they're not offering how to do something. They sell a supplement or they do something else. And you're like, okay, so you have millions of followers and you're making women feel seen, but like, are they getting results with you? Probably not. And like, I'm a little bit better for this podcast, but I am very direct. I'm very blunt. I'm very sarcastic. I'm very to the point. Like, I'm maybe not doing a great job of empathy or making people feel seen and heard, because I do the thing, but I'm also like, let's get you solutions. Like, let's focus on A to B. I'm not very good at coddling.
No, it makes sense. I mean, because I think there definitely seems to be a movement out there generally for like women's health. And all you can do is Google it. It's pretty well documented how understudied it's been for years, or how they've studied certain female treatments in men. And I'm like, wait, what? But yeah, that's a whole nother rabbit hole. But yeah, exactly. But so I think there's some good there to your point. It's just, I don't really think that's going to help. Or as you mentioned before, it's a fine balance between, client A never taking a supplement, and you're going to give them 20 different bottles of different stuff, and they're just not going to, the compliance is just not going to be there. Not to mention they came to with gut issues. Now they have all this powders and pills in them, versus over here, there's some things you do need to do because there's so much dysfunction that there has to be a more aggressive intervention. So I think that's the teetering I see. Even like I said, with one of my family members had a protocol, and that was kind of part of it. Was like, okay, you won't, like, you're a grown adult and you won't take like Flintstone vitamins. So like, let's not spend $1,000 on this like supplement package of 30 bottles. Like, you're not me. Like, I'll have a timer and I just been around it for so long. If I need it to be, but again, I just think it's, finding the balance for people between compliance and effectiveness, and what they can afford in their lifestyle. Cause someone has, resources to do it. Great. But like, what's going to give them the most bang for their buck and not make them feel like a failure because they just can't stick to the protocol.
Yeah, it's the supplement thing is so expensive. I think when I was doing it back then, it was an extra $400 a month just in supplements. It was nuts.
Yeah.
Or then you get Gen Pop, who comes in with like 5 different gummy vitamins, and we're like, okay, can we like go to capsules? Just like,
I know your pediatrician gave this to you 20 years ago, but we're kind of we're moving on. One of the things, to circle back on gut health, that I wanted to talk about was, what are some common signs other than the obvious, like related to mood, energy, and like immunity, that maybe might be related to gut health? Again, there's nuance and there's a lot of different things, but maybe someone should say, hey, I should look into this a little more. Like, what would be a couple of things that maybe some symptoms or feelings that you see from clients coming in?
Yeah, a big one is skin issues. So like psoriasis eczema, those are very much linked to the gut and either leaky gut or just some type of like dysbiosis. So in food intolerances, those are big gut issues. We have celiac symptoms like headaches and inflammation, and like sometimes we have women who come in and eat, like even for myself, I don't have a gluten intolerance or a gluten sensitive, like a celiac. I'm not celiac.
Right.
I do avoid it because of my thyroid issues, but I also, if I have too much of it, especially American wheat, like my fingers will swell, like my rings will not come off smoothly. So just body inflammation, joint pain, a lot of that is linked to gut. I mean, mood and serotonin, like you said, like aside from that, poor hormonal, like detoxification. If we're not pooping and gut health's not great, we're not dumping estrogen. So there's your estrogen dominant symptoms. And we're just recycling all of that. So we could have heavy periods, painful periods, acne sometimes in there. So there's a lot of stuff that's tied to the gut. I am not like, this was my big thing for 2025 is I was like, I want to dive into gut health way more because I don't know it as much. So it never was my specialty. Like if I had to say I had a specialty, it's like thyroid and PCOS, but gut health is becoming like my new baby.
Sure. Well, like you said, you enjoy puzzles and you enjoy the challenge and you like helping people. So there's enough puzzles and challenges with gut health out there.
Well, and you're helping solve a lot of these, PCOS and inflammatory and hypothyroid issues. And you're like noticing a lot of it stems from the gut and food and how we're processing and digesting ingredients. So you're like, okay, this is all linked. I need to get to know this area way better than I do.
Yeah. Yeah. You mentioned something about PCOS. I'm just curious for those out there, like if you can kind of walk through high level, like what is PCOS, and then maybe some common things that maybe someone should press into a little bit that could help maybe address some of those symptoms too.
Yeah. So PCOS stands for polycystic ovarian syndrome. And so there is diagnostic criteria that one usually gets from going to their OBGYN. We generally see hyperandrogenism, so high levels of testosterone in women versus a normal, healthy woman. We see cysts in the ovaries, usually like a string of pearls if we're getting ultrasounds. We also have symptoms of like hair loss sometimes, chin hair growth, like places that we don't want it, acne. And then 70% of PCOS cases are insulin resistant. So we see a lot of, pre-diabetes, potential to turn into diabetes. What it's been sold as is a gynecological reproductive issue, but what it truly is a metabolic system issue. It's a whole cholesterol, like the whole body is generally going through this type of like metabolic syndrome issue. And so a lot of women don't even know what kind they have when they get told from their doctor. They just assume it's insulin resistance. And I hope they're running labs, but not every doctor is running labs. There are 4 kinds. There's insulin resistant, which most women are, adrenal, which is caused by lots of stress. Those clients won't even be overweight usually. They might be underweight or fit. You'll have inflammatory PCOS, which I've personally worked with. That's a lot of food intolerances and just high inflammatory markers. And then post-pill, which a lot of women do get as well, because we're coming off birth control. All of our, especially oral birth control, a lot of our estrogen and progesterone has been suppressed for so long that androgens kind of take over for that 6 months of coming off the birth control. So we just get those unwanted symptoms. And, it really sucks for a lot of women because there's not really a lot of answers in Western medicine. They put them on birth control to normalize their cycles. It's a lot of irregular cycles, fertility issues. So we put them on birth control to re-regulate their cycles and like balance out the testosterone and estrogen, progesterone. They might get put on metformin and get put on a really low calorie diet with no carbs to lose weight. And none of that actually fixes the issue.
What do you see with with insulin resistance being such a high percentage of driving a lot of those, the more aggressive symptoms or high percentage of the PCOS cases? What are you using typically? What are you seeing as some examples? As far as like a protocol to help with that, or what are some things that you think there is some validity to for people to try to address that?
I would say most of the clients that we work with insulin resistant PCOS are all overweight or obese. So we do put them into a calorie deficit. Weight loss is the best tool for insulin sensitivity. So we'll be putting them through that. We do not, and shockingly, I mean, as you know, it's not even, they don't feel like they're in a calorie deficit because they're the type of client that's been starving themselves and then binging. So like when they actually do get to eat 1,800 calories a day, it feels like Christmas instead of 12. So we're doing that. We track macros. So we're doing protein. We're doing, decent amounts of protein heavy breakfast. We're starting to stabilize blood sugar a bit. We are doing like 35% of calories from fat instead of 30, where I generally like to stick my ladies. So we'll give them a higher fat, not ketosis out the gate, but we'll give them higher fat calories until we can stabilize some carbs. We'll give them an adequate fiber goal, so 25 to 30 grams of fiber a day. Make sure we're actually getting in like enough whole foods and shifting their diet. Sometimes we'll do carb consistent diets, so making sure they eat the same amount of carbs in each meal to stabilize that blood sugar response. Getting them walking. Walking is huge. A lot of them are sedentary or just do HIIT or fast. So we're taking away the fasting, we're taking away the HIIT activity just until we get their hormones regulated. We're doing weight training. They're not weight training, so we're starting to build muscle so we have more stores for that excess blood glucose. Sometimes we're doing supplementation like berberine, myoinositol, chromium for appetite if we need to, magnesium glycinate. There's a whole slew, but those would be a good place to start.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great list though, because I think a lot of people, you mentioned earlier about, general public and how confusing it is. They hear working out. They don't hear resistance training or strength training or, it's like there's nuance in there. Like you can't go do, the boot camp class or the high intensity cycle class if what I'm hearing is correct there, to where like, hey, we got to back that off, but then do some more, building blocks for to help regulate some of those things. So I think that's really smart. And as you mentioned, walking and just getting movement after meals. I think there's some studies out there that show it's like as effective. I've drawn a blank on the number, but a specific dosage of metformin, it was like the exact same result in blood sugar regulation. It's a few years ago when I read it, but so I'm a little rusty on the numbers, but yeah, I think those are all great applications. I did see a post you had on that topic, and I'm wondering if you can walk through it just for those who may not have seen it before, as far as how the muscle, having more muscle mass or more lean mass, how that helps regulate blood sugar for people. And by the way, like, you're not going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger, anyone listening who's afraid of that from resistance training, right? Like it'd be awesome if that was a problem. Like I lift some weights and I'm growing too fast.
Man, I was looking at my whiteboard because in my office I had that blood glucose breakdown with muscle on there for so long, and I just recently swapped it out for like a diagram of the menstrual cycle. So like I looked at my whiteboard immediately. But yes, so when we eat food, right, it goes into our bloodstream, gets processed as blood glucose. Our pancreas secretes insulin to shuttle these blood glucose into cells to be used as energy, or stored in the liver as like glycogen, right? So when we have more places to put that glucose, AKA muscle loves glucose. We store a ton of it to be used later. So if we don't have a lot of muscle mass, we don't have a lot of places to stick that blood glucose, and it ends up just like hanging out in the blood, which then drives up more insulin, fat storage, not what we want, right? Cravings. And so if we have more muscle tissue, it is more metabolically expensive. It takes more fuel. It shuttles and houses more fuel for storage. And then we don't have to secrete as much insulin. We don't have to have those repercussions that our body does to keep everything in homeostasis. So muscle tissue is fabulous for ladies. Amazing in any age, right? Because we start to lose muscle after the age of 30. So if we're not constantly building it, and especially as women are going through perimenopause and menopause and we're losing estrogen and becoming more insulin resistant just from losing estrogen, we really need places to stick it and keep it balanced, per se, for lack of a better word. I was like, there's no way to balance hormones, but there is a way to balance blood glucose.
Yeah, there you go. No, I appreciate that. It's a good, when you were saying that too, I mean, not only is it a really just good breakdown for people to kind of wrap their minds around the effectiveness and how that helps, but I also think, I want to say it was, what is his name? Lemon's his last name, Dr. Oh, I was just thinking it when you were talking. Don, I think it was Don Lemon. He's who Lane Norton and Gabrielle Leon got their PhDs under. I think he's in the University of Minnesota. and he did some research on, again, I'm going to explain it from a non-educated
Yeah.
person words. So essentially it was as women, more with women, because men just stereotypically just eat more meat. But he was saying women over time, as their metabolic rate goes down just over the years and they're eating less and less, prior to 30, 35, whatever, they were already eating a low percentage of protein. So if they go from, let's say, 2000 calories to 1800 to 15 as they age, that protein's getting smaller, smaller, smaller. And he was just essentially saying, like, to start, specifically, he was talking about women or smaller framed individuals that eat less, like starting them with a minimum protein baseline and kind of building off of it. And it just made me think of that when you were saying that, because I think a lot of people, um, they just don't connect the dots as far as like, well, I eat a lot or I eat this. And it's like, yeah, but your percent of protein naturally is going to go down if your caloric intake is going down, if you were already low to start, I guess. I mean, people like that are into lifting and all that, they're probably never going to, I don't want to say never, but probably less likely to have that issue. But
Yeah.
it just, when you mentioned those age groups and how you lose muscle over time, it was kind of an interesting piece that I recall just sticking in my brain from a little while back.
Yeah, no, that is exactly what happens. Like we have clients do 5-day logs before they start working with us, and their protein when they come in before starting to work with us is generally between 50 and 80 grams a day. Even if they're
Yeah.
eating 500 calories, their protein is 50 to 80 grams a day. So, we can't slam them up to 140 right away. We got to like kind of taper them up, but we definitely establish a higher baseline.
Well, I'm interested to hear a little bit about, and then I'll share kind of one of my thoughts.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm wrong, but with what is like I know you don't jump people to this, and there's, again, nuance to everybody and individual protocols, but what is like a protein target if they're coming in 50 to 80? What do you try to move them to? Is there any kind of ballpark benchmark you give them out of the gates and say, hey, roughly around this, we'll figure this out through testing and progress, but this is kind of where we're going to build to? What does that look like?
Yeah, I probably do higher protein than some coaches may be comfortable with, but I will do based on body fat. So
Mhm.
depending on their structure when they come in, right? We'll give them anywhere from 0.5 to 1 gram per pound, depending on like body fat percentage or estimated body fat percentage. So if someone's eating 80 and they technically should be eating calculated like 140, we will push them to like 115 at first or 120. And I will try and get them to 140. If they're, if they weigh 200 pounds, 140 is probably going to take up a good amount of their calories, and then fat and then carbs. So, and then we'll monitor digestion if they're backed up, or, if they can even break it down with their stomach acid or things like that. But
Yeah.
yeah.
No, that sounds like a really good approach there. Cause I was talking to a family member recently and they were just like, yeah. And her coach is spot on, doing a great job with her. But what she wasn't sharing with her coach is she's like, she's a little bit taller, wider shoulder, kind of bigger frame. And I think it was like 150 or whatever. And she's like, yeah, I got to take in 150 grams of protein. And she was 50 to 80 before that. And I said, so right when you started saying that, her tone, her shoulders dropped, she's like, failure, failure, failure. I'm like,
Mhm.
what if you started with 100 grams a day, do that
Yeah.
for 10 days, then go to 110 for 10 days? I'm not your coach. I'm just throwing out, like, stop beating yourself up. Like, you can't go from 60 to 80 to 150. And again, it's not her coach's fault. Like, the prescription was spot on for her targets and body fat and caloric
Yeah.
intake and percent of that and blah, blah, blah. But it was just like the behavior and just getting used to it and the gut and all that, to where she wasn't communicating that to her coach, where I'm sure her coach, knowing her coach, would have unpacked it further and kind of walked through a ramp, if you will. And so I
Yeah.
think it's important for people also, like, hey, if you're out there and you're hiring someone, you're paying them for a reason, like share. They need to know this stuff.
Please over communicate. Oh my goodness. That makes the coaching relationship
So
so
much
better.
easier.
So much
Yeah.
better. We don't know what to change if we don't hear it, right? And I think the biggest thing is adherence. And so if we slam a client up that much, we put them up that much, and they're not going to follow it, or they're going to be too full. It's even the same argument we have with like reverse dieting versus just throwing someone up to maintenance. Like, yes, there's no point physiologically with keeping a reverse diet, but psychologically, women are like not wanting to add on 450 calories right out the gate because of fullness, bloating, water retention, digestive issues. So we go a little slower, and that's fine as long as you
Sure.
get there.
Yep. Yeah. And I like to take the same kind of a discussion on fiber. I it's not. I had someone much smarter than me on the podcast a while back. That's does a lot of research in dietetics and was talking about some studies. I want to say it was in vegans of how long it takes for the gut to adjust to higher amounts of fiber. Essentially, what he was saying is I brought up the point of like the 25 to 35 grams. Even a lot of people have an issue with that out of the gates. And I'm just curious to like your approach with that, and do you kind of ramp fiber, and if there is any tips or thoughts on how to work through that.
Yeah, we will slow ramp fiber also because, again, we can have a lot of digestive upset if they're not prepared for it, right? Like a client who gets an average of 9 suddenly eating a bunch of beans, it's not going to be a good story.
Right, right.
Feel good. So we will increase by like 5 grams here and there, or we'll do some more easily digestible. Like a lot of people like supplements. I don't personally like fiber supplements. I'd rather they get it from whole food.
Sure.
That's my preference on that. But we'll start with like fruit, raspberries, amazing fiber, right?
Oh yeah.
The most amazing fiber per like gram, I would say. But
I just said that out loud because selfishly, after that podcast I did, it was like 2 months ago. I've been adding more, but I don't think I have raspberries, and I like raspberries. I don't think I have that in my diet because I've been like adding more fiber strategically. Even though I knew it, it was just like having someone beat me over the head about it because we're all stubborn with our own ways. And so anyway, sorry, continue. I cut you off.
No, you're fine. But honestly, like for what, a pint of raspberries, that's probably like 16 grams of carbs. It's like 9 grams of fiber. It is fabulous. So yeah, we'll start with that, or we'll start with like chia seeds, like just different things for different clients. And it depends on their disease state too. Like if they have hypothyroidism and it's not really managed well and we're already having slow gut motility, I don't want to like ramp a bunch of fiber to also slow it down. So we will taper and monitor their, like I said, every week we're asking you about your bowel movements. I want to know. So this is how we'll make adjustments if we need to. And then they have the opportunity to reach out to us every single day, like a high touch coaching back pocket coach. And so if there's like issues, we will adjust.
Yeah, no, that's great. Cause I would imagine, especially someone just starting, right? There's so many things they're going to, do. And I often say this like cause I've had friends, we all have, I'm starting it on Monday, and they all this like motivation and energy, but then it's like by Wednesday or Thursday, it's like, next Monday I'm starting it, So I think it's good to have that coach there as they have those struggles or those questions, because not only is it overwhelming for their body, but I would imagine mentally, like when way back in the day when I would first start teaching someone how to just measure and weigh food. Yeah, I didn't realize how overwhelming it was for them, because I just kind of grew up doing that, where I could see a plate and I'd roughly be like, yeah, it's about 6 ounces. That's about a half a cup, just kind of ballpark. Yeah, it's about how much I'm getting. Maybe I'm a little bit like Rain Man with food. I guess it came kind of natural to me, but and then I realized like, oh no, I'm just weird. So
yeah, no, it definitely, I was on another podcast recently and we were talking about like the time length it takes for things. And I was like, honestly, it depends on how quick we can get a client comfortable tracking correctly and weighing out food. And then like, we're not going to throw on a bunch of protocols all at once. Like we kind of have to work through what they can manage, because adherence is the most important part, and consistency. So, I would love to throw an ideal, this is all the things we would do, but it's really going to depend on how much we can stick with at a time.
Nice. All right, I got a curveball question for you, and hopefully my research isn't wrong. And if it is wrong, just lie so I don't have to edit this part out.
Probably not
So I read somewhere, not only are you a self-proclaimed metabolism nerd, but you thrive with color-coded spreadsheets. Is this true?
Wait, where did you read that?
I can send it to you after. Is that not true?
Color-coded spreadsheets?
Hold on, it's in here. This is what it says.
I need to see it. I mean, it's funny. I do have a way that our coaches, like we color code our rosters for our coaches. It's color coded, but.
Okay. So swing and a miss, but I thought I would shoot my shot anyways.
No, I want to see it. I'm like, wait, what?
I'll have to send it to you after, because it might be buried in some of these links. But yeah, obviously, just for those who don't know, like you've been out there, a lot of podcasts, a lot of information. So as we're kind of pulling some information, it was just one of like the the little notes that came out. So I was just like, huh, I'm gonna have to ask about this one. But
I'm trying to
um,
I'm trying to think of what they mean. My rosters are color coded red, yellow, and green, just on like when a client's due date is. But
okay, so not completely false, but not quite as didn't really land the plane there, which is fine.
I'm not a spreadsheet thriver though. That's not one of my like neurospicy type of things.
Looks like AI is not ready to take over the world then, and maybe that came from the some of the AI scan that we did. So,
Oh, that's a
um,
little sweet.
but yeah, just I know we're coming up on time pretty soon here, and definitely appreciate you jumping on. But I did want to give just an opportunity, if you could, just for those who might want to work with you. Like, do you have any? I know you have some different challenges. Do you have anything coming up, events, and then maybe talk a little bit about what onboarding looks like. We kind of unpack that.
Yeah, I do actually. When will this launch?
So about 3 weeks or so, 2 to 3 weeks.
So that
About
might
3 weeks.
actually be perfect. So we are actually, I personally, because I don't really take on one-on-one clients anymore. I kind of
Mhm.
told you, unless they're like a premium client, I do offer 2 spots for that. But I am personally hosting a group cohort for PCOS clients. So
Oh,
we
nice.
are actually doing like, you may pass the lead magnet, which is like a masterclass we're doing at the end of June, early July for PCOS clients. And then we're going to jump into a group cohort that's probably going to launch in August or late July.
Okay.
So something that's coming up that I'm really looking forward to. I haven't really done a specialized disease state group cohort, so I'm kind of excited to try that. And then, bring back the data for it and for all the protocols. So that's coming up. And then as far as just working with us one-on-one, I have an awesome team of 2 coaches, one being a registered dietitian, another one being, she has a handful of certifications, including the coaches one-on-one in person as well. Functional nutrition, metabolic science, all the things. I need like really nerdy coaches on my team to do what we do. So I
Sure.
love that so much. To work with us, we would do a consult call, and the consult call would be with me. I like to talk to everyone who wants to come into the company and work with us. If we decide like through the consult call that this is a good move for you to move forward, we'll go over, what package would be best and time length and tests that you may need, if any, and then get you going through, your 5-day log that we request from everybody, onboarding you into our apps, into our group chats. We're really big on community on the team because
Mm,
I think it's really important to have that support that someone else is going through the same thing as you. Like even for our PCOS clients, we have like group chats for that and
yeah.
hypothyroid and moms and perimenopause. So it's a really like nifty system. And then you will literally be onboarded and introduced to your coach and start probably a week later from when you sign up. And then it is game time. We use your week to week check ins to see what we got going on, start you with an initial protocol. And it's really just like that simple. Then all the adjustments kind of come as we learn more about you and your schedule and
And
support
what do you?
system.
Is
Mhm.
there pre-work they're doing before the check-in, or is it like a video they log in, or do they fill something out each week? What does that look like?
We have a check-in form that's pretty long sometimes.
Right.
They don't have to fill out everything every week, but we do, weight measurements, pictures, bowel movements, fluids, steps, workouts,
Yep.
mental, like them filling out how mentally they felt, if they need help with something, how the week went, their effort level of the week. Like we have them upload labs that they got done and send to us, and then we'll do an interpretation and go over that with them. So they're filling out like intake forms, onboarding forms, check-in
Yeah.
forms. We have a lot of forms.
Yeah, but the more info, the better, as you were saying before. And I was just thinking, I don't, similar to you, right? Like I don't coach as much. There's so many other things, and I don't want to do a client a disservice. But I had the bright idea later in my 40s to start jujitsu, which was great. To
Nice.
get smashed by a bunch of 20-year-olds. No, and so through that, though, I actually was fortunate enough to work with some pretty high level athletes. And one of the things that when you were saying that I thought about that we like only a few that I was helping, but believe it or not, like water and sodium were like huge things for them. And as far as their impact on their performance, they're like, hey, should I be on testosterone? Should I be on this? Should I be on that? I'm like, well, let's just pump the brakes. I will say the third thing was carbohydrates around activity. So I'm like, you
Mhm.
wore a gi for 2 hours, maybe sometimes 3 hours. in a sweat box in the middle of Texas, like, and you told me you sipped an 8-ounce thing of water as you walked out. Like, yeah, we kind of, that may or may, there might be 1,000 articles of research that shows how that affects your performance and recovery. But I just, when you were saying all the things you track, I just think a lot of people are like, I have sometimes in the past, I've had a hard time with people dialing that in, but it made it very difficult to make adjustments. But I think for those out there that are working with a coach, like you said, you're paying for it. The more info you can give, you can find that nuance. Luckily, I just threw it on there and started bugging the person for it. And then I found out, how far off they were. I'm like, there's some pretty well vetted, quick formulas we can run about how much sodium on average that you're losing as a 220-pound male sweating out 2 kilograms, 3 kilograms of water after your training session. Like, we can calculate like how much you lost and just kind of start there and just replenish. But I went off on a tangent there because
but it's a nerdy
all
tangent.
The details. Yes, nerdy tangents are welcome by you. I like it.
Well, I think what you're also proving is that, like, listen, if you're going to go online and get a PDF plan or just a regular fat loss plan from someone, you're not going to have to give much data. You're not going to have to give much information, share much. But if you really want the custom individualized approach that's going to like teach you about your body, fix the things, move forward, like, so that you can learn how to do this for years. Like, even investing in a year of coaching can take you for the next 30 years, just if you learn how your body works. You're going to want someone who wants to know everything down to your urine color in the check-in form, which we do. Make sure you're hydrated, like, you want someone looking at that stuff and being like, okay, here's what we're going to do. So I think the more data points, the better, the nerdier, the better.
Right. Yeah. Cause you never know, right? You never know what little nugget of info is in there that someone's missing out. But well, I do appreciate you coming on. A lot of great information from this episode. Really excited to publish this for those out there. And, everybody in the show notes will have where you can find Dr. Ashley on social media and all of her contact information. And as always, too, like, share the episode, but then put questions in the comments, because if we can try to answer them for you, or if it's too intelligent of a question for me, I'll shoot it over to Dr. Ashley, see if she'll save me and help me out. So definitely keep them coming. We appreciate that.
Yeah. Thank you for having me. Slide into my DMs. If you do find me, that's the best place. I have no boundaries with Instagram, apparently. So
Good stuff. Good stuff.
You guys.
Good stuff. Well, thanks again. Appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.